And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Black Powder Podcast, the only podcast that I know of where the only real libertarian is present on it. Mr. Marcus Matthews, our melanated brother in arms over in California. He's probably, golly, you have to feel so isolated over in California. I know that that's difficult. That's why he breaks bread weekly with like-minded individuals like Mr. Eric Parker Bold Liberty was in Jacksonville. Now he's up in the Carolinas, still kicking it up there. Probably the only normal person on this podcast, in my opinion, is probably Eric. He's the normal one that keeps everything. And of course, my name is Michael White, aka Miguel Blanco, for all the ICE agents out there. Look, hey, don't come deport me, but if you do, send me to a beach and a place with some good tacos, and I'll be really happy, man. A free flight, that sounds great, to Cancun. Tonight, we have a special guest. Take yourself back in time 5 years. It's 2020. You remember 2020. It's about this time. Spring is in the air, and there's the Wuhan flu going around too. And there's only 15 days. We're going to flatten the curve, and everything's going to be fine. Trust us. We're the government. We never lie to you. Somebody ate a bat and had sex with a pangolin, and here we are. We have a virus. And so you're locked at your house. You're non-essential, but you're collecting free unemployment money from the money printers. And on the television, on Netflix, is a little show called The Tiger King. Probably one of the most epic documentaries that's ever probably been produced, in my opinion. One of the most culturally relevant, to be quite honest. And if you ask me personally, that is a story of the wrongful prosecution of an individual. I don't think that the evidence adds up to that. But if you remember, Joe Exotic, a.k.a. the Tiger King, a.k.a. Joe Maldonado Passage, I believe is his legal name. Some lady named Carol Baskins said that he tried to kill her or have her killed. And now he's in prison. And tonight on the Black Powder Podcast, right here, we have Mr. John Phillips, Esquire, attorney with Joe Exotic. Go ahead, man. John, welcome to the BPP. How are you? There you go. There you go.
Free Joe Exotic.
Free Joe Exotic. That's right. We're hoping Trump might get around to it. So, John, let's just get into it, man. Tell us about kind of how you got into all this. Start wherever you want to.
Right. So, I did boring insurance defense for like the first 10 years of my practice, and then just kind of went out on my own and figured I could figure it out. And kind of did, and got some good cases, and kind of progressed up the ladder as a litigator, and got more and more law licenses, and thought when my beard went gray that I was a little bit more distinguished, and all of my distinguished kind of went out the window around COVID. My wife and I watched Tiger King just like other people, just holy shit, what the hell is this? What is going on? But give me the next episode. And later that year, I got a call from Carol Baskin's deceased husband's family. And Tiger King season 2 tells this story.
Oh, wow.
And they called and said, "Hey, look, we need a lawyer." And I said, "Well, didn't he die like over 20 years ago? Like there's a thing in Florida called the statute of limitations."
Yep.
And I got 2 years and you're talking 20 something. And they said, "Well, but there's this intentional death exception." I said, "There is." And I was like, "Look, tell them to come to Jacksonville, Florida, and we can chat about it." And so they drove up. We had a good talk, and they came with Dateline and 2020 and 60 Minutes, and Netflix was still in tow, and they were filming a season 2. And it was like, all right, I can dance for this. And the story kind of takes a switch when Carol Baskin went on Dancing with the Stars. And so here's this middle-aged white lady trying to keep up and do the Paso Doble. And we found out, I called the local news station. Actually, the local news station, Jacksonville First Coast News, called us and said, "Hey, you want to run a commercial?" And I was like, "I don't really do commercials. Like, I'm not that guy.
I'm not Saul Goodman, right?" Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
I don't do that so much. But can you find out the price in Tampa? And so they found out the price in Tampa, and I was like, look, if I can do a Tampa and Jacksonville spot, just those two spots, land it in those two markets, and y'all approve what I'm going to do, I'll do it. And they were like, we don't care what you do, just as long as it doesn't, you don't curse and the usual things.
Right.
And so I ran down to Tampa with my crew, and we filmed a public service announcement type commercial that was totally Saul Goodman, like totally. Like if you know what happened to Don Lewis and who murdered him 20 years ago, give us a call at 1-800-LITIGATE, right?
Yeah.
And we rushed it out so fast that we misspelled assistant. Like I've since fixed it. But like my team, who spells everything right, like missed assistant, talking about Anne McQueen. And so we ran this thing. It was supposed to be the first commercial just in those two markets, right out of the gate. Like, and so I'm sitting there with the remote control, like watching, Carol was later in the show. And I was like, here we go.
Yeah.
And no commercial. And next break, here we go. No commercial. So I start texting and calling like, hey, I paid like $2,500 for this. Like, what's going on? And they were like, well, National's looking at it. And I was like, well, what do you mean they're looking at it? Like to air it or to censor? And they're like, it's just a lot, it's just a lot. And so next thing, I get an email from Good Morning America saying, are you available tomorrow? And I'm like, oh shit, they're about to air this. And so I don't know how many markets it hit, but it hit and landed. And Howard Stern was talking about it the next morning, and Good Morning America. And like, I was busy, and it just changed the narrative from this bad dancing to, holy crap, Don Lewis's family just did a sucker punch on national television.
Yeah.
And so, I still represent Anne McQueen. She's got a defamation case because Carol Baskin accused her of being involved in Don's death to deflect. But Joe saw it and loved it because I did in 5 minutes, what he'd been trying to do for years.
Right.
And he said, can you come out to Texas and meet with you? I said, I don't do criminal defense like that. He said, but you have what I need to build a case. And so we met. I told you guys this before the show. Like Joe rounded the corner in his brown prison jumpsuit and a mullet. And, even as a straight guy, I was like, all right, I get it. I get it.
A beautiful man right
Joe
there.
Has
a beautiful man.
Yes.
Yes.
And so, some of the goons that are still affiliated with the show are like, get mad because my kids still call him Uncle Joe. And not Sleepy Joe, but Tiger Joe. And so we just kept going. Season 2 was filming. We documented how he was set up by just ruthless individuals. I mean, the kind of shit that would put your children's names as a website and link it to a porn site, like that kind of shitty human. And enough was enough. I needed to go back to being a family man and actually having a little bit of respect and go back to the gray hair distinguished. And so I've let the other lawyers kind of take over. Joe's got a good team. I don't do federal appellate work. Our motions for new trial are pending before the appellate court.
Okay.
The stuff he was really set up. So the quick version of that is the first thing the U.S. attorneys did was bring up the 5 tigers that were euthanized, right? Because they want to make him like this guy that's cruel to animals, because then you'll believe the rest.
Yeah.
And they had John Rinku, rest in peace, testify to the 5 tigers, their names, the fact nothing was wrong with them. And of the 5 tigers he identified, we found 3 alive in Tennessee.
Wow.
Well, if they're alive, guess what? They're not dead. Wow. And of the other tigers, they only exhumed the heads because they couldn't show the bodies, because if they showed the bodies, they'd show, that these animals have been declawed and mistreated and were old and were capable of and authorized to be euthanized.
Right.
And so they just pulled the heads out. you know, 5 miscellaneous heads. There's so many damn dead tigers in that facility.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, they had the couple of flunkies that would do anything to set up Joe, because they thought they'd inherit the earth, you know, that he walked on, and you know that was that. But it's been, you know, I joked with you guys before, I've never done acid, but like if a lawyer could practice doing, you know, on acid, like the twists and turns of that case were a constant trip.
I mean, so what you're saying basically is the unending power of the state, the government, essentially began this entire operation with an attack on character, to color the individual as somebody you should just assume is guilty, right? And if you ask any questions, we don't answer those. We're only going to let you ask the questions we want to ask. That's kind of what you're saying happened, right? I can't believe it, right? Yeah.
I'll go deeper than that. So I mean, you're talking deep state here in that you had PETA and animal defense leagues and all these animal rights groups, right? That decided that Joe's way was the bad way,
Mm-hmm.
and Carol and Howard,
Or the good
you
way.
know, surrounded themselves with. They were doing the same shit. Like
Exactly.
Howard died doing Airbnbs with baby tigers. Like he was doing worse shit. And
Right.
so, not Howard. That's the new husband, the old husband. But you know, they got in with the feds because they worked together with these animal rights groups. And I have emails dating, you know, 7, 8 years before this, where they were trying to get them on any little thing. They were sending in, you know, flunkies to record them, and you know, they never anticipated that they were going to get him for murder for hire. They wanted to get him for cub petting and cub abuse, and he just didn't do it like they
Mhm.
wanted him to do it.
So
And
explain to the
so,
audience real quick. We'll go
yeah,
back to it. Explain to the audience what cub petting is, what that process, I mean, what that is.
yeah, and look, I've grown through this too. So basically, I'm trying to think if I've got a picture of me and a cub here. I don't. But basically, like, okay, South Carolina, perfect example. So Doc Antle is still operating through his family a facility like a zoo, right? And you can go to his zoo, pay your fee, and there's a lot of tours and big cats and little cats and medium-sized cats. But at a point, you all sit around, and these majestic baby tigers
Wow.
come crawling around in your lap, and they take pictures, and they're beautiful, and it's awesome, and you come out respecting, you know, God's earth, right?
Hmm.
And like, I have a picture of me with a baby white tiger that I love, like that. I don't know if he's still alive,
Hmm.
but here's the thing: after about 6 to 9 months, those little cute baby tigers will eat your fucking finger off.
You can't pet
And
them anymore.
after about 9 months to a year, they will eat your face off.
Hmm.
And so, you know, they won't, the few people that they're cool with, but they can't be exposed to the public.
Right.
And so when you have to create tigers such that every season of tourist population needs baby tigers that are the right age, you got a surplus of, you know, 1 year to 3 year to aged out tigers. And that's the problem. And
Gotcha.
that's where it kind of is like, all right, I get why cub petting is a problem. I think there are bigger problems on this earth, but
Sure.
you know, I get that if you're euthanizing, you know, non-baby cubs for your own benefit, even though you're creating your own stream of animals, and
Hmm.
some animals are sacred and some animals aren't. You know, if it's a cow, we don't give a shit. Let's
That's
eat it.
right. Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, but if it's tiger, okay, it's protected. Even though, you know, Joe was right to the extent that he is helping, you know, reestablish tigers, and he wasn't the guy, you know, euthanizing them all. That was
Right.
his problem, is he collected them, and he had 200 of the damn things.
Right.
And so, no, feeding them, he needed to bring in horses and other animals to let them eat. But it's, you know, but the whole thing about having a cub pet and a picture is
I have to
what
imagine that's a
potentially
great
got.
profit driver. That I have to imagine that is a good revenue source. That probably was a key revenue source of these places. I mean, if I'm thinking in my mind about being in an operation like that, that probably sells 100 times an admission,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right.
everybody wants to go pet a baby tiger, right?
Yep.
If you ask me on any given day, do you want to drive out to go see the adult tigers? I might tell you yes, but to actually pick it up and do it's a different thing. So I can see why an enterprise that would be something that people would do. Yeah.
And it's a perfect tourist trap. Like it's something that if you're in Myrtle Beach, and look, there's some shit that Doc Antle did and some lifestyle choices he made that I don't appreciate and I don't like, and I don't care. I've been
Yeah.
to his facility, he treated me like like VIP, and talked to me about everything in the world, and I I'm all about, look, it's his hustle,
Yeah.
and there's far more dangerous and predatory hustles, but again, it just kind of depends on like if you're immediately euthanizing 9-month-old tigers, systemically, I think that's a problem, and I think there's some government intervention that could happen, but don't don't be PETA and put your judgment and your false speculations onto somebody else and pick who's good and who's not just because somebody's more successful at it.
But that's always isn't that always the problem with these emotional arguments is their only consistency is really inconsistency. I mean, nobody has a problem with overcrowded chicken coops, or like you said, factory farms for this. But then suddenly, if you were to ask these people, are all animals sacred? They'd be like, yes. And you're like, okay, so why are you not trying to prosecute Tyson? Right? Like,
Right.
right.
Well,
Yeah.
here in California, they did have a problem with too many chickens, where the egg laying chickens in cages. Now all of our chickens, the government legislated it be cage free for chickens. So there is, but I wanted to ask who's the enemy here for Joe Exotic that we're dealing with. I want to get right to the gist of who's the problem that's railroading this man into his current situation.
Good question.
I mean, you've got two factions. So he had no money, he had no name then. Like he was already in jail before Tiger King started. He's never fully seen it, and so he had this kind of Bureau of Fish and Wildlife, you know, game officials that were working with Carroll that did everything they could, and the U.S. prosecutor that was his main prosecutor literally, and we've heard it from multiple sources, had a dartboard with his face on the back of her door and wanted his ass.
Wow.
And that's that's too far, right? And so they tried it in front of a judge that was already assigned the civil cases against Joe and had already awarded Carol Baskin basically his entire legacy. And so there were 3 other cases that he had, or 2 other cases before this, one after, that this same Judge Paulk sat on, and had already said some horrible things about Joe and made some horrible decisions about Joe before it's time for the criminal case. And then the criminal case, man, you got literally, we have phone calls because the idiot handed over his entire cell phone. But you have entire phone calls where the Netflix producers are sitting down with some of these witnesses, telling them what other witnesses are saying actively during trial before they testify, and offering them $5,000 to talk as soon as they can. And
Oh my
so
goodness.
your whole trial is corrupt. The judge doesn't give a shit. He's got his mind. He's going to let anything in. Public defenders are overworked and really don't care. And guess what? As soon as this trial's done, that prosecutor. So in the federal system, you have federal appointed judges for life.
Right.
They get appointed by the president, and they're there for life. And then they get to establish magistrate judges. So they all vote and hire magistrate judges that are term limited. They're the federal judges get to decide. So that prosecutor immediately, next class, was a federal magistrate judge,
Imagine
thanks
that.
to Judge Paulk. And so it's like, how can you not say that's crooked? Like, how can you look at that? And then we caught her doing a animal seminar with PETA and ADL and all those folks. And I made a big deal and booked a ticket to attend it. And she canceled her appearance.
Wow.
But his number one enemy was the government, and still kind of is. And then you've got the guys that set them up that just can't. They don't have any other place of relevance, and so they're gonna say whatever.
Whatever, right? Yeah.
And it literally would tell a lie for a lie's sake, and dare you to debate with them about it. And it's so narcissistic and evil, but how do you counter it? Like finally I'm going to ignore it. They're streaming to 200 people and I just don't give a shit anymore. But his main enemy right now is kind of the system. And it's hard to undo because the judges get so much discretion because we assume the system works when it just doesn't.
Let's talk about that a bit. What is it about once an individual is incarcerated, they've been proven guilty in their first trial? What is it about the system that makes it hard to get a fair shake if you didn't have one the first time?
I mean, it's clawing, up a mountain. There's just, one, it's expensive to get good lawyers. Two, the public defenders at every level are overworked. And some stay public defenders because they can't do other things. I hate to say it. Some are amazing and they're there for the ethics of it, but these guys didn't crack a book for Joe. If you can't find tigers that are alive, it took me 10 minutes.
Right.
And
John. So where in I know after season 1, he was already in jail. He was defended by public defenders. And then you did this ad and then Joe Exotic asked for your help. This podcast got started because I think I saw he shared something under one of Trump's pardons saying free Joe Exotic. And then I tagged you. I was like, hey, John Phillips, you want to talk about it? And they said, whoever's running his X account, John was able to expose so much information and new evidence to the trial or to the case. How did that work? And can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so that's part of the acid trip, right? So, I had Tiger King's cameras following me as much as I wanted, and they pay. I don't pay, and I didn't know they were paying, but they do hand out cash for access. I can't, I won't, and I never knew they did at the times that I was dealing with it. I swear on my children on that. And but all I know is like the hitman, Alan Glover. Like I said, I need to interview Alan Glover. And they're like, can you be in South Carolina next week? And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And so I sit there with Alan Glover, in his front yard, and it's filmed for their purposes, but I get a legit interview, and then the cameras go off and I get to ask more questions. And they did that for Jeff and they did that for James. And then, they all were so, enamored and wanted their money from Tiger King that they all handed me their cell phones. Wow. And so literally I've got this locked drawer. I've got, so many cell phones from these guys. And James, the jet ski guy, handed me two that had gotten, because he's a jet ski guy, that had gotten, salt water in them. He's like, these aren't going to work, but if you can find something. And I think he was just trying to do me a favor, thinking I would never cash in on it. And one of them I still can't get to work, but one of them I got it to work, and I was able to download a bunch of files that weren't coded with anything that it was like a proprietary extension. So, like files, like an MP3 file is like .mp3, right?
Right.
And so that's a music file. We all know that. Well, these were coded with things that didn't make sense. And so I was just sitting in bed like, fuck it. And I changed them all to MP3, I think. And as soon as I did, it opened up as a voice memo.
Wow.
Or a recorded call. And so it was some proprietary app that wrote in its own code, but it was readily accessible as an MP3. And so next thing I know, I have like 600 of his recorded phone calls where he was recording himself, recording others, recording him doing credit card fraud, like threatening his wife, like recordings with everybody. And I was like, holy shit, like I have this, like I have a recording of him getting a bribe during a federal trial.
Right.
Like, that should be it.
That should be it.
The end of the equation. Let's retry it. Let's redo it.
Look here.
And
Obviously, yes. Yeah.
Right. And so, we had so much. And then Alan Glover, and this is a big point of contention. So spoiler alert, I'm gonna ruin season 2 of Tiger King. The last scene, Alan Glover tells me while we're in my office, and I didn't know it was coming. Everybody said it was orchestrated. It wasn't. Alan Glover's like, listen, before the Carol Baskin hit, right? I was tasked by Jeff Lowe to go kill Joe Exotic. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, there was no hit on Joe Exotic. And he was like, listen, there was, you can believe me or not believe me, but I was to tie a piece of wire, between two trees where he drove, at his fastest, his four-wheeler, and kind of like the cartoon, we were just going to piano wire his head, and, and there would be enough force that he would at least be incapacitated, if not dead, and then we could finish him off. And I was like, literally, and by then, I didn't have Netflix camera crews in because if we were getting into stuff that I didn't want the world to have before I was ready.
Yeah.
And so we started recording our own stuff and licensing it back to them. And like, I have the video where I'm just like looking at my staff like, holy shit. And so I'm like, how do we prove that though, Alan? How do we prove that? And this is literally the last scenes of Tiger King. And he goes, let's go up to Oklahoma. I buried it right outside the park where I was going to do it. And I bet you that wire's still there. I'm like, there's no fucking way. And so, I paid my own airfare, but Tiger King paid for everybody's airfare. We went up there.
And there it is.
Holy crap.
Yep.
And so it was exactly where he described. We found it within 10 minutes. And it was buried, like we were wearing boots and shit. Like it was buried to the point that it wasn't freshly planted. And it doesn't mean a lot in the scheme of things because you're not going to now charge an attempted murder charge.
Right.
But it's proof that there was a lot more to this, including killing Joe, that puts this, right into Jeff's lap. And because that was Jeff's plot with Alan. And it's like, oh, well, again, if there was a murder, like if I were defending the main case, the fact that there was an attempt at Joe's life certainly points a finger at other killers on the park.
Right.
But, again, we found 50 of these things, that the just railroaded is the word, where, Joe didn't get a fair shake. And, Joe's done a great job, with Roger Stone and Matt Gaetz and getting the word out, that I think there was a chance at a pardon last time.
Right.
But, a lot of those were dictated by money. There was money that changed hands for many of them, Kodak Black and that type. And Joe didn't have it. And I am optimistic. Trump's wild enough to do this, particularly, given the touches he's had with the criminal justice system and
it
those
certainly
around
has
him.
changed him, hasn't it? Yeah.
It has, and so I say I'm not Republican, I'm not Democrat, I'm reasonable. But certainly there's a lot to everything Joe's saying. And I'd love to see him out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Go ahead. Sorry, Eric. Go.
I was just going to say, so you're unequivocally saying you believe he deserves a full pardon or commutation of a sentence or full pardon, case should be thrown out?
He'd take anything at this point. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
he totally would do a time served, cool, give me any restrictions in the world. Just let me go play my guitar and teach people like the stories he could tell. And like, they wrote a book, but then the book got censored by, Hollywood people, and it wasn't his words. And like, the guy's been through so much shit with people stealing from him. And like, I honestly, if Elon Musk and some of these guys can contribute at a federal government level because of their experiences, so can Joe.
Right.
And that sounds crazy, but like cell phones in prisons, the old Keister phone, like in that prison, or let me not say that, in some of the prisons Joe's been in, and at least one of the prisons Joe's been in, the guards are the ones selling these phones. And so they'll do a massive seizure and shakedown.
It's a great way to increase sales, isn't it? I would love that.
Resell them, and then you'll get caught with it, and they'll slap you on the wrist, throw you in the shoe, solitary confinement, and then you wind up with a phone again at $2,000. And guards have died during this process, and that's phones. Like, there's drugs, there's so much, because you've got a population that has nothing else to do and are used to some of these things, but all of those secrets, if you want to clean up the swamp, let's start with the corruption and collusion going on in our prison system.
Right.
So I need to ask a question real quick.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is government actually creates crimes that it intends to fight, or are you saying that these occurrences where drugs and phones and stuff gets into prison in a more organic way? Which would you say happens more or less?
Look, it's hard to get anything. Like, I'm an attorney, I get extra, like, I can walk in a little easier than the public.
Sure.
I don't get the full strip search, right? Mm-hmm. And I can have permission to bring a laptop if I really need it. But there ain't no way I could sneak in drugs or a phone. Like, there's just no way.
Yeah, you're not going to risk your law license and your.
And I'm not risking it either. But there's really no practical way that I could do it.
Government? Are you blaming the government? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, I'm totally blaming the government, because they've created this secondary commerce that they're benefiting from, and again, I don't blame them.
Markets develop where they're needed, right? I mean, the market aborts the back. Marcus, real quick, hold on. I want to go back to Joe. So for those at home that maybe don't know, how long has Joe been incarcerated? Kind of what age is he coming up on right now? What has been his prison life been like thus far?
Conviction was Tiger King was 2021. I think his conviction was like 2020. So he's at 5-6 years.
Yeah.
It's been like, while he's been out, his parents have died. Like so much has changed. He still kept his spirit. He's fought cancer, like, legitimately. I know some people, the haters, say they didn't, but I've seen his PSA results. Like, he really had prostate cancer, and they shipped him to North Carolina for chemo. His spirit's still up. It goes up and down. He's a good guy. Like he's crazy.
Sure.
He ran as a libertarian.
Yeah,
right.
He's almost a quintessential libertarian candidate. That's why I left the party. I'm just joking.
In his music rights case, so somebody was trying to steal some of his music, and I got to bring him in for a mediation in Pensacola, Florida. And so we got to sit there and there's not Secret Service, but like FBI around him, and at a point we were all cool, and they were like, all right, what do you want? And I was like, can we just keep him uncuffed and let me order Outback? Like, can I just order Outback for the guy? And so we ordered Outback.
That's great.
Fed him a steak. They took pictures of us in the courthouse, like normal people. And Joe's the best guest, the most entertaining guest you could have at your dinner table. He's not a monster. He's a good guy. He's different. We're all different.
He has one of the best campaign ads that I'd ever seen, where he was like, I have had crazy sex. I've done drug. Like, I mean, I remember seeing that and I was like, this is great. Like, I mean, this is, I mean, that seems like a very honest individual. He doesn't strike me as a person that is trying to be deceptive with anything. He's incredibly genuine. You can tell, like, there's no filter. He's just who he is. And so as the story progresses, personally, me, again, I've always sort of fit in with the misfits. I feel like that's where I'm always at, right? I sort of was like, this is not the kind of person who pursues the actions that are currently being accused of. That was just my personal impression. So he's been there 5 years. There are appeals pending in the system. Is that correct? Yeah. Can you talk about those or what?
Appeal, his main appeal from my motion for new trial is still pending. I think his ineffective assistance of counsel was recently denied for procedural issues, but his motion for new trial is still through the appeal of that is pending. If this were an administration, kind of like Joe's administration, that wanted things done right and paperwork, until that's over, he technically probably can't get a pardon. He can get a pardon whenever the president says he wants to give him a pardon. I mean, hell, Joe was pardoning his third cousin twice removed on the way out.
Joe pardoned people who he said hadn't even done anything yet.
Right.
So,
exactly.
I mean, the whole system's fucking crazy now. Like,
I was like,
it's like we're selling indulgences.
All of America get a tax evasion pardon, and we'll just start over.
Thank you. That'd be a great idea. Yeah.
So he's working his way up the channels.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I get the people that, and they're probably not necessarily watching this show, but like, the pro PETA or what he did to animals and cages, and like, he gets it. He's been in a cage. He's been in a cage, for so many years in solitary confinement. That guy is as reformed as he's going to get from that standpoint. Like, enough is enough. And I think he's about at what the original plea offer was. But they like the celebrations by the animal rights community after he was convicted was just disgusting.
Right.
Are you pro? Like, are you pro? If you're pro animals, are you pro people?
Right.
Solitary confinement is the worst thing you could do to any animal or person, but you're okay with it if it's people.
Right.
Go fuck yourself, know? So
I like this guy, Eric. Yeah. By the way.
And I'm giving you a little less filter, but it's
proceed, good sir. Yeah, let it go.
Let it fly. No, but those that don't know, I met John when we were running for city council in Jacksonville. John was running for a district race. I was originally running for district switched at large, but I kind of knew when I met John, he had a little bit of a libertarian streak in him, even though he wasn't running as a libertarian. So
right.
Hey, he said he's reasonable, and there
you go.
There's two types of libertarians. There's reasonable, and then there's absolutely crazy, and then there is, I guess, the Venn diagram overlap, right? So John, back to the appeals process. For anybody out there at home, if you've ever gone and if you're bored like me, and you'll go down a rabbit hole and pull up your state Supreme Court or pull up the appellate court and go look at all the things that have been filed and what the rulings are, it's like a 99% no rate, basically, right? So, I mean, that's what's always sort of confused me about it is it's like the one industry, it felt like when it comes to the motions in the court after a guilty verdict, is like you'd think by now people would have it figured out and perfect, but it's really down to personalities. There's so much that is happening that's really very just up to someone's opinion, right?
It is, and you know what Judge Polk would do is, you know, look at the tip of the iceberg and say, yeah, but this was the evidence. You know, there was this recorded call with the second. So the murder for hire, which was again second because they needed to make Joe a
Stack
monster
charges, yeah, right.
to make it work. But you know, the murder for hire with Carol Baskin, like we could tear it apart over and over again because they, you know, Allen admitted that it was based on lies. He didn't leave the park to go kill Carol. He left the park because he's tired of Joe and he was trying not to kill him. Like all these things, and then they were desperate because they didn't have it closed off, so they sent a undercover federal agent in there, you know, to get Joe to say these magic words on tape with other people's help. And Joe never offered him a cell phone, never offered him a gun. Like he was just kind of blowing it off. But you know, they had his desire for Carol to be dead, which was part of the Joe Exotic character.
Yeah,
If Carol had a heart attack, I think he would have been happy. But you know,
that's not criminal.
It was speech. You know, it wasn't what people said it was. And once you have, you know, documentary cameras coming, you know, people are theatrical and you know, they want their character arc to look right. And like it was just or they want the crack of $5,000 cash. And so it just all got so bastardized. And you know, Judge Polk would just look at the tip of the iceberg and say, yeah, but there was this one recording where Joe espoused a desire for to have her dead. Well, I don't give a shit. Like that didn't matter in the scheme of things. The only reason the jury went with it is because they had so many stacking lies on top. But you know, when that's all the court has to look at, you know, you've got a 90+%, 97% conviction rate in you know, U.S. attorneys' offices, and you've got, you know, appellate courts that you know, are equally appointed and they all hang out together and, you know, they all, you know, party hard. Not really, you know, and it's their own way, you know, their Illuminati way. And so it's, you can't get justice. And then like just Monday, I'm in a state court in Jacksonville and a state court judge tells my client, my former client now, but we were withdrawing from her case, but told her that what I was offering her was reasonable. Like I was trying to do the right thing for her, but she lost her son and she wanted an arrest to come from the civil case. Right. And she's like, you can't get that justice here. Like it doesn't work like it works on television where Mr. Phillips is going to have a trial against an empty chair and the prosecutor's going to be like, oh my God, that's right. You know, it's just, she said it 3 times, like justice doesn't work like people want it to. And, you know, that was on my birthday. And I was like, yeah, I didn't even have to come to this hearing. And like, I got knowledge because I finally see somebody that's wearing the black cloak admit that the system's flawed because they won't. And, you know, Joe opened my eyes to it just on so many levels, just how flawed it is. And, you know, he got a raw deal. And at some point, you know, everybody's kind of over it. And there's no reason to keep him any longer.
Right. Like we
now Jeff's saying he's like Jeff's posting a glamour shot of him and a kangaroo. He's like, oh, he fucks kangaroos and he fucks kids and like all this stuff. And I'm like, we would sue you, except you don't have anything and you're hiding in Mexico. Like PETA's already taken everything you got. Yeah. Like you have no relevance. But you know, I'm sure he's gonna repost this. But you know, it's like he's literally tagging Dennis Quaid, who posted stuff about Joe, like, but he fucked a kangaroo. Like, no, he didn't. Like, he didn't fuck a kangaroo, you dipshit.
Words I did not think I'd hear today.
You were actively hanging out with a kangaroo fucker. Like,
yeah.
Are you telling me that like you hang out with kangaroo fuckers? Because if you do, then you did then. Like, you were there.
So, what will it take? I have to ask, what will it take for the American, because I always say the American judicial system It's messed up in a lot of ways. What will it take for, and I blame public education personally myself, because everybody thinks they're smart after getting a public education, and they're as dumb as the day is long.
Yeah, so there's the question. Is the answer to in public school? Just say yes. No.
So,
yeah.
what will it take for the American justice system to
Yeah,
actually move forward?
What do you think that, like, if you had to say what the reforms might look like, what might they look like?
I don't see it. It's we're a country that's how many years post slavery, and then a country that's how many years post, dogs and fire hoses. Like that was yesterday.
Right.
And now, say what you will about Trump, and I've litigated between Omarosa and Trump, so like I've been in their hellhole too.
Oh wow.
And I've deposed, Sean Spicer and so many of those guys. And a lot of those depositions are up on YouTube and are a hoot. But
we will link some in the
fucking
description of the
on
video.
YouTube.
We'll go find them.
And so, but where our kids are getting trained on 4chan and 8chan and, in the chats of Roblox and there's so much, the other day, my kid, I hope I'm not ruining this for somebody, but I was just doom scrolling on something, and somebody said, they basically said, yeah, that's not real, just like Santa Claus isn't real. And I look up at my 10-year-old and he's like, and I was like,
holy shit.
Don't believe this shit. And I just kept scrolling. Like, what are you talking about?
But Dad, it's on the internet. It must be true.
Right. But think about, like, and I'm aging myself, but 20 years ago, you didn't, like 30, like when I was that age, you ain't gonna find out that Santa Claus isn't real in encyclopedia.
Right.
There's no way to access that information. And here it's like so much is forced on you and so much is fake and down and designed to water us down and make us mad at each other and dilute us and distract us and all the things. And so we're getting dumber. We're rewiring ourselves. Our leaders aren't really leaders anymore. And that's fine. I said on a presentation Monday, like the Make America Great Again that Reagan offered, very different than the way Trump offers it, and one might have, like, who knows, like I grew up in the 80s. And so I liked Reagan, he's an old grandfatherly type that naturally fit as president. And now we're just in chaos.
Are you saying? I think. Hold on, real quick. Hold on, Marcus, real quick. I don't want to lose this thought. Are you basically saying because the judicial system is this sort of living thing that exists with the people and culture, right? That if the people are of less virtue, the system is of less virtue? Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's way smarter than I said it. But the system's systemically fucked. Okay. It's systemically racist. It's got its issues. And even if you put that aside and said, all right, look, but two people walk in the courthouse, do they both get justice? Depends. But there's still so much appointment and election by nepotism, particularly in the South, that how are you going to expect justice to be whole when you don't have a true merit-based system? And I'd say the same. I threw myself into the city council race just to help downtown. I eventually moved out of it. Like, fuck this, I'm not going to work here.
I can't reform it. I'm leaving. I got you. Yeah.
But the nepotism-based candidate who didn't have half my experience, third of my experience, a tenth of my experience, won, and that's cool. Congratulations, that's great. He ran he knocked more doors and ran a better campaign. Meanwhile, I had every national endorsement, Aaron Brockovich and Ben Crump, and like everybody's like, Jump's the guy. But you just, if towns can't get city council right, and we got judges that are wrong. Like Eric should have won his race. And but if you can't get that stuff at a micro level right, then how are we going to have it right at a macro level? And so it's all so fucked up. And you know, it took Joe's case, because I don't do criminal defense, for me to be like, oh man, that's why all my criminal defense lawyer friends are mad. You know, but we just have so many problems, and we're getting, you know, more divided. Like here's a crazy example. I didn't know it was Diddy, but I knew about all that stuff 3 years ago because a guy came to me who's a prominent actor and said, I got to get away from this stuff.
Wow.
And then he went on lockdown, and we never heard from him again. And his people were like, now we got to get away. And, you know, they name dropped and said there's tapes because this actor confessed to a bunch of people. And, you know, there's these parties, and, you know, names that haven't even come out yet are involved. And I was like, you know, are you kidding me? Like we're depraved at that level. That those are our leaders, and it's both sides. Like,
no,
you know, Trump
you nailed it.
Too.
You nailed it. Yeah,
any of that stuff, because that's how politics works. It's sex and money. If people like to narrow that down to Hollywood, no, and all tyranny starts locally. And that's also sex and money.
Sounds like it starts at the baby oil aisle, at least in this regard. Over here,
with your local councilman, or your local school board member, or your local church official. That's where tyranny starts. And government is the root of all evil. It's not money. Money is not evil. It's the people who impart their whole personality upon it. That's what's evil. And that's what's sad, because when I look at, you know, I didn't watch the Tiger King per se, but I used to read about it. And I was like, why is this guy in prison? I was like, that never made sense to me. And the question I wanted to ask you is, how do we see the American justice? I kind of leaked in upon this earlier, but is there any retort the American people have to fight against shit like this? Do we have to petition our politicians for Joe, or what do we have to do?
Yeah, like how do we get Joe out? How do we get him out? What can people who are watching this do help Joe get out?
I mean, practically, I think it really is a nepotism hustle at this point, you know? And the good thing is about where we are now, and I got so many issues with so many different people, and sue for this and that and the other thing. But you know, at the end of the day, there are people that didn't have a voice that have a voice, and they reelected Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And so I am optimistic that some of those folks, and it's you know, it's people that, like, you know, Matt Gaetz and like I got called down to South Florida. I was down there anyway, but I got a call from Roger Stone's people and said, hey, you want to meet Roger Stone? I was like, shit, yeah, I want to meet Roger Stone.
There you go,
Like, I don't give a shit what my political party is. Like, sure. Roger Stone is a bedrock of the person next to the person getting the person elected. Like, he's done it.
He said on Twitter he was going to donate to my campaign. Roger, you didn't, but I'm glad that you at least tweeted that you're going to. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So Roger Stone made me a damn martini in his apartment, in his condo, and we took a picture together. And I did put it up on Instagram. I don't know if it's still there. I think I might have taken it down during the election. But
don't want to lose my Democrat client base.
Yeah, like
hey man, billable hours are built. They don't have a color. I get
they literally paid. Like, I'm a civil rights lawyer. the black community made me, right?
Right.
And so they gave
I
me
meant
a
red or
voice.
blue is what I meant for billable
And-
hours. Thanks for
and-
taking it to
and-
that level. That's what
No, but
I
they
appreciate you.
literally they were
yeah.
running commercials, and Eric can tell you, like, they were running commercials about me on the rap stations saying that, like, Trump and I were like this, and that I voted Republican for my entire life. And I was just like, but I just sued him and got I got $1 million in attorney's fees from him. Like, I
Right.
beat him harder than anybody's ever beaten him, deposed his experts, humiliated him,
And tricks.
and got Omarosa, not quite invited to the picnic again, but like she
Nah,
won.
She's not back,
And,
by the way.
and I mean, that whole case was about whether White House NDAs should be constitutional, and they shouldn't. Like, you
No.
shouldn't be able to get, like, top secret speech. That's one thing, stuff like that. But non-disparage agreements coming out of government, if
Right.
you're that sensitive, I'm sorry. It is what it is. Nanny,
You're
nanny,
not-
boo,
yeah.
boo.
You're no longer
But-
a private enterprise here, people.
But we
Just run for
won
whatever
that
you-
case, and it, like, all of this has kind of led me to just kind of make sure my priorities are in over. And I've got a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old. My priorities are them,
Yeah, there
and
you
my
go.
wife. And, like, if
Oh,
I'm
3, 3, and
if I'm
3.
going home and they're
3,
happy,
3, 3. Yeah.
I'm good. Like, this will all come and go, and we'll have fun cases, and I've got some crazy ones in the works, but it's like, how am I living as a human, and am I compassionate, and am I kind, and am I doing the right things to teach my kids that we don't have to scream over each other to solve problems.
Yeah.
I just want to point out one thing to everybody listening, watching, and the two co-hosts, because I'm going to call you guys co-hosts right now.
We're back to being called
We're
co-host.
back to being
Back
co-host.
to being co-hosts. Mr. John M. Phillips and myself are both Generation X. So he's imparted the knowledge that Generation X has for millennials, Generation Z, and whatever the hell you
Hold on,
people
I'm a Zennial, man. You always get this one wrong. I got the Oregon Trail
You
thing
do
going for me.
have a
Yeah.
little bit of Gen X in you. I'll give
There
you
you
There
go.
you go. There you
All
go.
right.
Yeah, John put the
I'm
glasses
sorry.
on.
0.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because we're only 3 years apart. We both grew up with the same influences and whatnot. Because I gotta say, Reagan scared the ever living shit out of me. Because I thought everybody was talking about nuclear war in like 1983,
Telling us you were
1984.
scared of a bomb, a
Elementary-
nuclear bomb.
Oh, dude,
You're
in
supposed to be
elementary-
hard over here. You scared
In
of a nuke?
elementary school, we did nuclear war drills.
Got on the desks. Y'all did that?
Yes.
We did.
That's amazing. Okay. Yeah.
Like,
that
yeah.
had ended by my time.
And when I was in elementary school, we did nuclear war drills. And that was during Reagan because we were like, this shit could possibly happen. This wasn't an outlier.
Well, see, and that right there, hold on. Don't let that thought go. That's why some of this shit's fucked up today. Because a lot of those kids, they fucking believed that. And they thought, well, yeah, I don't need to use my common sense. This desk is going to save me from a fucking nuke. And they grew up to be the people who said, trust the experts. That's who those people became. Yeah. And
you know,
guess what? If you find yourself on the end of a crime, chances are 12 of those sons of bitches are going to be your jury. And there
Right.
you go.
Right.
Yeah.
and those people ended up being Democrats and Republicans.
Oh, shut up, Marcus.
People
Shut up, Marcus.
said, this is bullshit. We're like,
All right,
John
hold on. We're coming up on an
and
hour.
myself.
Marcus, we're
But-
coming up on an hour here. We're coming up on
But
an
the
hour.
other, let me finish that thought, though. But
Yeah.
the other part of the Weekly Reader, I mean, the other part of the nuclear bomb, stuff was that we had state propaganda, and I don't know who the hell wrote the shit, but we had Weekly Reader tell us it's true.
Yeah.
Like here's a newspaper. You talk about fake news, like fake news in the 80s was way worse than fake news
Way-
now.
You
Like,
could live through a
Russia's-
fucking nuke if
Russia
you're
has
under your
capability
desk.
of doing this. And but we also didn't have the internet to go check and be like, oh, this isn't possible, right?
Your
like
news sources were slim.
how else are you going to get information?
And now people just use the internet to tell other people, yeah, you're a desk denier if you don't think that a desk, that's what they end up doing now. They don't even go look it up. They just call you out, right? I mean, so yeah.
But to be full disclosure, that whole get under your desk, duck and cover has been going on since the 50s. But it went from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and it kind of
drizzled. And then the USSR fell because Reagan was a great president and finally broke them. And that's what happened. Yeah. And so it worked.
Toe the line, Michael. Toe the line.
Yeah, toeing that line. Ronald Reagan is the greatest man. Exactly. All right, so we're up on an hour here. Any burning desires for some significant questions? I'd like to let our guest, Mr. John Phillips, Esquire, attorney with Joe Exotic, have sort of the last word. But any burning desire for a question?
I have a question.
Make it quick, Marcus. No rant before question. Just a question.
Yeah.
AI is going to take the legal justice system.
Good question.
Going forward.
Yeah. How will AI affect?
I had somebody message me earlier this week that was like, I want to be a court reporter like my mom. Is that going to happen? And I'm like,
no,
you better do it quick, because AI has already essentially made that useless. Like, we need a notary probably, but we don't need somebody like doing this the whole time
or talking to that thing.
And case research and all of that. It's not perfect yet, but we're still going to need, because again, we're dealing with jurors. We're still going to need, somebody that can deal with the least common denominator,
right?
And be the guy that's telling them that the nuclear bomb's coming and this is the desk you need to hide under. Like, you like part-time salesperson, part-time, like storyteller, and so everything's going to change. And with that, comes more chaos.
Right.
And more people losing jobs and having to find, their own way. And we're in scary times, and it's the 5 years before now and the 5 years, coming, we're going to have more change to how we do things and think things and process things than we ever have before. And that's what, like, we're in such a new era that is going so fast that I don't think we can possibly evolve fast enough. And what I'm worried is with chaotic leaders and us versus them, that I mean, I've got a total side, but I've got a gun manufacturer, and I know I can see Eric already getting mad, but I've got a gun manufacturer that is in his state that I have a problem with, because in the Trump slump, it was sportsmen, and it was pre-Trump slump, it was hunting, and it was guns had a purpose, and the Second Amendment was built on that. It was somewhat militia. And making sure that we have enough to just hold off. But then, post-Trump slump, when we needed more guns, it really became more us versus them, and race wars and propaganda. And again, same thing about nuke bombs and deaths. Like, we're being misled by a bunch of people that need us mad, and like the Democrats need us to say, "Oh my God, we got to have this," and the Republicans are like, "Oh my God, we got to have this," and it's like, but do we need, like, we're really more alike than we are different, and the problem is now that the guns are, like, you got kids who are being raised on 4chan, 8chan, all that bullshit, and the gun stores are there. They're marketing them. They're creating memes and going after these kids. And to me, it's like Joe Camel back, in the cigarette days. Like,
that's what I was going to say. Okay, because you won't get anybody on this podcast to agree that guns should be harder to buy. I think everybody here would say we should be able to order them in the mail order catalog. I should be able to go on Amazon and get one. That's my personal opinion, right? But I do have it. It is interesting to me about how we market to children. I'm a parent too. but mine are grown now. I got a 20-year-old and 16. Well, 16 is about to be grown, but you know what I'm saying? Like, so I've seen these little girls grow up, and I know how kids are very, very they can be manipulated very easily, right?
Right.
And advertisers, the market, of course, is not stupid, and it just figures out that, hey, this is a good way to do this. That's why we got rid of these things, whether we can get in a philosophical argument if you should or not. Are you saying that common sense sort of maybe advertising of guns is kind of what you think should happen, maybe?
It's not even advertising. It's like you can go on ARFCOM, right? And there's plenty AR15.com. I'm sure all your viewers know.
Oh, yeah.
And you can go on ARFCOM and read posts about race wars.
Oh,
and
wow.
and there's right there, there's a certain manufacturer that's like, we're the gun of choice for a race war. The same ones like painting, and I'm talking about, I bet, Eric. And they're the ones that wrap their guns in the boogaloo colors just to sell some more damn guns.
Yeah,
And,
well,
like, at some point, look, I get it, but if Joe Camel is bad, then Dave the astronaut shooting a fucking automatic weapon in space and targeting to children who are in
that
these
SpongeBob AR-15, get your take it. It's fun to bring to school. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that, but yeah, right.
We do not condone bringing.
Yeah, we do not condone. We want to be very clear, but that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, I think what, Mr. Phillips, that is. I have not heard that argument before. I haven't heard someone that's actually highlighted that as an issue. And I got to be quite honest, it's not a non-issue. It's really honestly something I don't hang out on places that talk about race wars and stuff, obviously.
Right.
I get enough of that from Marcus. Marcus does. And so he tells us what they say, right? But
Marcus, race war, what is
we as a society, this idea, hold on, this idea of community standards, right? We've always throughout time had created community standards. It's the reason why we don't have again pornography in the kids section. Well, they're trying to some places, I don't know, but yeah, I mean that's why we don't do that. And so that's an interesting angle about the advertising of the gun manufacturer.
Can I talk about the race war real quick?
All right, and let's wrap it. Yeah,
if you're faster than me, you're getting shot, because I don't want competition in the Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome world that we're headed into, where there's just going to be dunes of sand and we need to find food and stuff. If you're more equipped than me to procure food and you're not providing food, you're a threat to my existence.
Marcus is killing anyone more athletic than him. This is incentive people to sit around and not do anything. Okay,
it's like the old joke. It's like the old joke. I don't have to beat the bear.
I just got to be fast.
I just got to beat you. Yeah.
All right, so Mr. Phillips, we're at an hour and 10 now, so let's go ahead and get wrapped up. Tell the listeners again who you are, where to find you, what's the 60-second spiel for I am John Phillips and I approve this message.
Yeah, so my name is John Phillips. You can find us at floridajustice.com. John Phillips-esque in most of the places on socials. I'm licensed Florida, Georgia, Alabama, New York, DC, Texas, Illinois, Oklahoma. I think that's 8. The third most licenses in the country. Like we do, we're looking for high-end civil cases where there's a wrong. Like it doesn't have to be, I don't take all R cases or D cases. I'm looking where we can help justice, help balance, fairness. Like again, going back to the gun thing, I'm killing my outro, but it's fine. Like the feds, I mean, going back where it combines, like one of the things the feds aren't telling y'all in these manifestos and these mass shooting situations is that they're all like circle jerking around each other over concepts, three main concepts: TND, which is total inward death; TFD, total Fed death; TPD, total politician death.
Wow.
And they're all kind of keen on it. And the Trump shooter and was a TPD guy, total politician death guy. And, these kids are hanging around these low rung, non-accountable websites and listservs and message boards and, getting information. And if guns are there, can't buy it on Facebook, but you can find it right there. It's a problem. And I just kind of look at the world now, Pirate looks at 40 something, whatever, as you know, how can I shape my children and their friends?
Yep.
And, you know, what can we, where are things going wrong? And so, you know, I'm a gun owner. I got one right here. You know, but at a point, my 13-year-old shouldn't be inundated with hate speech. And that's up to me as a parent to stop, right? Like that's up to me to install apps and monitor him and be his big government. You know, but at a point, I can't see it all. I can't be there when he's at school, you know, but we're just, you know, we don't get the parenting we used to get either. And, you know, people are too busy and you know, we've just got to be kinder and do better with each other.
Well, we have to have you back on to talk about that concept right there, because I hadn't heard those terms until. Have any of you heard those terms? Like I hadn't heard those. That'd be something.
CIDFDPD.
We probably just got flagged by some NSA server, and they're talking about it now on the Black Powder podcast. You know, so anyway,
we got our Fed handlers.
Yeah, they're probably watching. Hello, our FBI guy. We hope you're having a great night. You know, our FBI girl. We don't know. I mean, you know, it could be
this damn thing. Like, yeah. I know it's monitored.
Oh, for sure, all the time, right? Well, Ms. Phillips, again, thank you so much for coming tonight. We do want to have you back on to talk about that subject. This has been another exciting episode of the Black Powder Podcast. Tune in next time because we might even have, I don't know, somebody else on. So, Marcus, you want to take us out with our standard line?
I want to thank Mr. Phillips for coming on. You were an inspirational guest, and I appreciate what you do. Thank you, Eric, for arranging this. You're a grand individual. I appreciate you. Thank you, Michael, coming on, blessing us with your presence. With everything that we always say on this, because this is a libertarian-based podcast, the only true libertarian podcast brought to you by the only real libertarian. I want to tell everybody to live free or die.
Free Joe Exotic. Hashtag Free Joe Exotic.
You guys
take us off.